In the heart of West Africa, under the vast, unwavering sky of Burkina Faso, lies the capital, Ouagadougou, a city that beats like a drum, a sprawling symphony of life, struggle, and resilience. The air in its grand market is thick, with the scent of sun-baked earth, roasted peanuts, and the sweet perfume of mangoes, all mingling with the exhaust of countless sputtering motos. Here, in this river of humanity, a torrent of commerce and conversation, is where our story begins. It is a story not of systems, but of the soul, not of poverty, but of character. It is a cautionary tale about a leader who saw with his heart, and a young woman who was given a key to a new life, only to discover the prison was within herself. Our story centers on a man who walked among his people not as a ruler cloaked in ceremony, but as a guardian, an observer with a quiet gaze that missed nothing. President Ibrahim Traoré. Known for his modest demeanor and fierce dedication, he often moved through the city without fanfare, seeking to understand the true state of his nation not from reports, but from the faces of its people. One sweltering afternoon, as the sun beat down upon the corrugated tin roofs of the market stalls, President Traoré, dressed in simple fatigues that blended with the crowd, was walking through the chaotic aisles. His eyes scanned the faces, the laughing children, the haggling merchants, the weary laborers. And then he saw her, a young woman, barely out of her girlhood, sitting in the dust by a butcher's stall. Her name was Amara. She was thin. Her clothes were frayed, and her hand was outstretched, her voice a near whisper, as she begged for a few coins or a scrap of food. But it wasn't her poverty that stopped the president in his tracks. It was her face. Beneath the grime and the deep-seated weariness in her eyes, he recognized her, a ghost from his past, a memory from his days as a young officer. This was the daughter of Sergeant Diallo, a brave soldier who had fought and fallen beside him years ago in the north, a man whose last words were of his little girl, his Amara. The president remembered a photograph Diallo carried, a picture of a smiling child with bright ribbons in her hair. To see that same child now, reduced to this, was a blow that struck him deeper than any bullet. The shared history, the sacrifice of her father, and her present reality created a painful, silent explosion in his heart. Ignoring his security detail's subtle warnings, President Traoré moved toward her. He crouched down, not as a president, but as a man meeting an equal. "Amara?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. The girl flinched, her eyes darting up, expecting pity or scorn. Instead, she saw a face of profound seriousness and familiarity. "I am Ibrahim," he said simply. "I served with your father." The name, the shared memory, was a spark in the darkness of her eyes. Tears welled, not of sorrow, but of shock and a long-forgotten sense of connection. He didn't lecture or promise. He acted. "Come," he said, helping her to her feet. "Let us eat." He led her away from the noise of the market to a quiet, humble canteen, a place of sizzling oil and shared wooden benches. He ordered 2 simple plates of rice and sauce, and as they ate, he listened. He didn't interrupt as she spoke of the years of hardship after her father's death, of promises broken by distant relatives, of the slow, grinding descent into utter destitution. He listened to the bitterness in her voice, the anger at a world that had taken her hero and left her with nothing. He saw not just a victim of circumstance, but a soul hardened by loss, a heart that had mistaken entitlement for justice. After the meal, President Traoré did not offer her a handful of cash, a temporary fix for a permanent problem. He understood that true help was not a handout, but a hand-up. He saw an opportunity to honor his fallen comrade by restoring his daughter's dignity. He took Amara back to the market, not to the dusty corner where she begged, but to a vacant stall, small but in a prime location. For the next 2 days, his men worked. They repaired the roof, painted the stall a hopeful shade of blue, and stocked it to the brim. Sacks of rice, maize, and beans were piled high. Boxes of tomatoes, onions, and peppers filled the shelves. He provided her with a scale, a cash box with a generous float, and a ledger to track her business. It was a kingdom in miniature, a fully fledged enterprise, a second chance made real. As he presented it to her, the market vendors watched in stunned silence. Amara stood before it, speechless, her eyes wide with disbelief. President Traoré placed a hand on her shoulder, his gaze steady and serious. "This is for your father's honor," he said, his voice low and resonant. He was a builder, a man of discipline and integrity. This stall is a tool. With it, you can build a new life, a life of purpose. Promise me, Amara. Promise me you will build. Do not let this gift become a stone that sinks you." Amara, overwhelmed and weeping, nodded fervently. "I promise, Mr. President. I will make my father proud. I will build." But a foundation of character cannot be built in a day, and Amara's heart, ravaged by years of perceived injustice, was a house built on sand. The initial wave of gratitude was powerful, but it was shallow. It was soon replaced by a more familiar feeling, the gnawing hunger for what she felt she was owed. The discipline of running the stall, the early mornings, the haggling with customers, the careful accounting, felt like a different kind of prison. The quiet, steady work of building was too slow, too mundane. The respect she now received from the other vendors felt hollow compared to the life of ease and glamour she had dreamed of in her darkest moments. Her core flaw, a toxic cocktail of pride, impatience, and a deep-seated envy for others, began to bubble to the surface. She saw the opportunity not as a tool to create lasting security, but as a treasure chest to be plundered for immediate gratification. The wise warning from the president became a distant echo, drowned out by the loud, insistent clamor of her own desires. The very next week, the turning point came. A flashy merchant, known for his shrewd deals and love of quick profits, approached her stall. He saw her impatience, her inexperience, and the quality of her stock. He made her an offer. A single cash payment for everything, the entire inventory. It was a sum far less than what the goods were worth if sold piece by piece, but to Amara, the stack of banknotes he fanned before her eyes was intoxicating. It was instant. It was tangible. It was the escape she craved. The president's words about building, about honor, about her father, they evaporated like mist in the face of this glittering temptation. She agreed without a moment's hesitation. The merchant's men cleared the stall in less than an hour, leaving it as empty and hollow as the promise she had just broken. With a thick wad of cash in her hand, Amara turned her back on the blue stall and on the chance she had been given, and walked away without a second glance. The dream of a new life had begun, but it was a dream built on the wrong foundation, and it was destined to become a nightmare. The life Amara chose was not one of patient building, but of explosive demolition. The cash in her hand felt like a fire, and she was determined to burn through it with the fury of a lifetime of perceived deprivation. She descended upon the city's vibrant fabric district, trading her worn-out clothes for expensive, brightly colored pains she could not afford to tailor. She frequented cafes she once only stared into from the street, ordering lavish meals and sweet drinks, leaving ostentatious tips to feel the fleeting power of generosity without sacrifice. She gathered a new circle of friends, parasites drawn to the scent of easy money, who showered her with flattery as long as she paid the bill. They danced in noisy clubs, the rhythms a temporary escape from the silence in her own soul. Each purchase, each extravagant night, was a desperate attempt to fill the void that her father's loss had left, a void she now mistook for a simple lack of things. In less than a month, the fire of the money had burned down to cold, gray ash. The new friends vanished as quickly as they had appeared. The fine clothes became ordinary, and the hunger in her stomach returned, now sharper and more bitter than before. The empty blue stall in the market stood as a silent monument to her folly, a constant, nagging reminder of the solid future she had traded for a handful of fleeting moments.
Broke, abandoned and consumed by a furious self-pity, Amara made her way not to the market to seek honest work, but to the gates of the presidential palace. She was no longer the humbled girl from the gutter. She was an accuser, armed with the unshakable conviction of her own victimhood. She made a scene, her voice shrill with indignation, until a guard, recognizing her, arranged for a meeting. She stood before President Traoré not with shame, but with a defiant glare. She told a wild story of being cheated by the merchant, of the money being cursed, of the pressure being too great. The excuses poured out, a river of blame that flowed everywhere but inward. "The opportunity you gave me was not enough," she declared, her voice trembling with entitlement. "I need another chance, a real one this time, a proper shop, away from the dust of the market." President Traoré listened with a heavy heart, his expression one of profound disappointment. When she was finished, he spoke. His voice devoid of anger, filled only with a sad clarity. "Amara," he said calmly, "I did not give you money. I gave you seeds and fertile soil. You chose to eat the seeds in one night rather than plant a harvest for a lifetime. The problem was not the size of the gift. The problem is the discipline in your heart. I cannot give you character." He then made a final, wise offer. "True wealth is built from the ground up. Go to the state farms. I will arrange a job for you. Learn to till the soil. Learn the patience of a farmer. Learn to respect the slow, hard work of growth." Amara stared at him in horror. To work in the fields like a common laborer was, to her, the ultimate insult. It was a confirmation that he saw her as nothing. She spat a curse on the floor, turned, and stormed out, her heart now a cold, hard stone of pure resentment. That resentment curdled into poison. Amara began to stalk the market, her former place of shame, now a stage for her vengeance. She spread vicious rumors, whispering to anyone who would listen that the president's help was a publicity stunt, that he had set her up to fail, that his compassion was a mask for a cruel heart. Her story found purchase among the cynical and the envious. But there were those who had seen the truth. An old woman named Kadiatu, who sold vegetables from a small mat near the blue stall, had watched everything. She had seen the president's genuine concern, the fully stocked stall, and Amara's subsequent wild spending. She recognized the lies for what they were, the bitter harvest of a spoiled soul. Amara's betrayal escalated. She conspired with an unscrupulous blogger to publish her twisted story, planning to publicly defame the man who had tried to save her. Kadiatu, overhearing the venomous plot, knew she could not remain silent. Her loyalty was not to power, but to the truth. With a heavy heart, she reported what she knew to a palace guard. The plot was swiftly uncovered, the evidence of Amara's malicious slander undeniable. Her downfall was as swift as her spending spree. She was arrested not for her poverty or her failure, but for her deliberate attempt to destabilize and betray. The community that had watched the entire saga unfold turned their backs on her, her own actions having forged the bars of her prison.
This story teaches us a hard but vital lesson. A great opportunity given to a small character is not a blessing, but a crushing burden. Blessings turn into curses when they are not met with wisdom and gratitude. President Traore gave Amara a key, but she could not see that the door to her prison was locked from the inside. This story reminds us that real change begins in the heart, not in the wallet. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful true stories about compassion, leadership, and the choices that shape our destiny. Tell us in the comments, do you think President Traore was right to refuse giving them more money? Your voice matters. Let's hear your thoughts below. Thank you for watching. Stay inspired, stay grateful, and we'll see you in the next story.